welcome to the Motorsport Coaching podcast, sponsored by Motivate Training and Management. This is a podcast where we talk to drivers and industry experts to help you maximize your performances on and off the track. Let's get started with today's show.
Hey Team Motivate, it's Matt Payne here for another episode of the Motorsport Coaching podcast, powered by Motivate Training. Gotta say, I'm pretty pumped for what you're going to hear in this pod. Joining us today is Luke King, one of the most charismatic drivers on the rise in Australian motorsport. If you don't know Luke, he's the front runner in this season's Supercheap Auto TCR Australia Series for Audi. He's a master networker, doing whatever he can to be sponsored to get on track, embodied by his sponsorship this year from Chinese liquor brand Moutai Audi. He started through the traditional ranks, coming through karting, Formula Ford and the Toyota 86 series, and is now in TCR, and has an awesome story about a last-minute trip to China to race. Luke has some terrific advice on how important it is to keep building your network and keep working hard off the track to make sure you get on it. It isn't easy for many people to be upfront in meeting new people, and Luke opens up on some of his challenges, along with many of the inspirations throughout his career. Although Luke has an impressive list of mentors, we try and dig deeper on what it takes to build your personality and the importance of finding a point of difference without having a crazy ego. Motivate Training is the leader for your race training needs, from fitness, nutrition, mindset to media training and sponsorship advice. Jump onto motivatetraining.com.au, that is MOTIV number 8, and check out our packages or reach out to our team with a question. You can find us on email or all the social platforms. In the meantime, start your engines and enjoy our chat with Luke King. And joining us this week on the Motivate Training Motorsport Coaching podcast is TCR Australia driver Luke King. Mr. Moutai, how are you, mate?
Good, thank you, mate. I wouldn't be on the podcast without representing the sponsors, as you can see. So
yeah, no, fantastic. Yeah, no. It's we'll get into that Moutai sponsorship a little bit further in the chat, because it's pretty exciting, and especially to have a unique brand like that in Australian motorsport. But mate, it's great to have you with us. I've been wanting to do this for quite some time. How did motorsport start for Luke King?
So my father was the one that put me into racing. I don't think I really had a choice. It was one of those things where Dad was working in the industry, and I was the first one out of my other two brothers to sort of take to it. And like, I was playing with Matchbox cars and all that sort of thing ever since I can remember, really. So Dad worked for Peter Malloy in his engine shop, and they did all of the Ford dealer teams and the privateer teams back in the day when Moffat had his 1-2. Dad worked closely with John Goss, Colin Bond in the Ford Sierra days, and then moving through to some of the early supercar stuff. And he also worked over in NASCAR for a stint there with Robert Yates Racing, doing some of their engine performance and development. So yeah, that was where it all started for me. And haven't stopped going to a racetrack since I was probably about 2 years old.
Yeah, fair enough. And you're from the Central Coast, is that right, of New South Wales?
Yeah, correct. I was originally born in Richmond in Sydney, and then we moved up to the coast after Dad stopped working for Colin Bond. And yeah, I think they just wanted a bit of a lifestyle change, and we ended up on the coast, which is now a massive growth area. We can't stop people from coming here.
Yeah, exactly. Not a bad part of the world either, just outside of Sydney there. And, since that time, obviously, how did you start racing? Where did you start racing?
So we started racing. So my uncle helped me with my first go-kart. We couldn't really afford to get into it, but my uncle runs a full drive training and tours business. He's been operating now for over 40 years. So he's another big influence in the whole driving sphere for me. So he actually sponsored our first go-kart at the age of 12, I think it was. And we started up at Newcastle kart racing club. So I know a lot of people have raced up there. Awesome little track. It's got the ski jump flip flop over the backside, so pretty cool circuit to learn on. Remember my first trip around the kart track, I had my visor open the whole time and people were waving at me to put my visor down, and I was just waving back at them. I was having a great time. So yeah, soon learnt pretty quickly, and mainly did club racing because that's pretty much all we could really afford to do. And then cars sort of came a bit later on.
Yeah, since that time, you've gone through quite a few different categories to get to where you are now in TCR. Yeah.
I think we've just had to do what we can really, and that was our limiting factor. You know, we had through Dad's experience, we had the ability to prep and run most of our own stuff from home. And luckily for me, that's probably what's got us through, really. And also having Dad's contacts of drivers that he's known or people in the industry who have been able to give us a hand when we're in a spot of trouble has been, a pretty big part of why we've sort of gotten through. So the money side always had to come, as it does for everyone. It doesn't matter how much money you've got to start with. You've always got to have more in the end to kind of make it into the top level. So, I think we've just shown that persistence pays off, which is something that Mum and Dad used to always say to me. And we just kept trucking through the different categories and going as long as we could.
Yeah, I think, and that's that's the key part of what this podcast is all about, is to inspire young people coming through the sport as to how they need to go about it. And that sponsorship side is something that you've become quite adept at, in being able to chase unique sponsorships down or getting enough over the line to be able to get onto the racetrack. What have the key things been for you from that sponsorship chasing perspective?
I think it just comes down to relationships and being able to put yourself out there. The networking side of it for me has been the biggest part, and being able to, just build a relationship with somebody, whether that be a local business owner, someone who owns a local dealership, whatever it may be, where you can do something for them, and you just never know who these people know. You know what I mean? They could be best friends with someone who's your next major sponsor or wants to do some sort of a promotion in motorsport. And I think the biggest takeaway that I've had is you don't know if you don't try. So, the worst thing that can happen is someone says no, and you move on to the next one. So you can't be scared to try and to ask the question, because you just never know what's going to come of it.
No, that's exactly right. And that's tremendous advice, in that, realistically, you have to talk to everybody regardless of where you are. You never know whether it's at your local restaurant, whether it's down the pub, could be at church, could be a local shop, could be anywhere.
Exactly.
You don't know who is going to open a door for you that might have an opportunity. And I think that is that again is something that you've become quite good at, is being able to build and maintain those sort of relationships.
Well, I remember Dad always telling me, I'm pretty sure it was Dick Johnson used to have a thing where no matter who he'd sit next to on a flight, he'd always get their business card or their contact details, or he'd always make an effort to talk to them at least. Because once again, you just never know who you're going to sit next to for an hour or so and have a conversation.
Yeah, well, that's right. And I mean, one thing that you are good at is having a chat and talking. So I think that, that's one of those things. It's one of those skills that you've got to continue to practice as well, on how you address people, how you speak to people. And did you do any sort of training in that sense?
I wouldn't say not any formal training, more so just having the support around me, I suppose, to go and talk to people. I mean, in some of the work that I'd done, I'd had to do some public speaking, like as a as a kid in high school, I got involved with classes there that sort of pushed me down that sort of pathway of being comfortable to talk in front of people, which isn't always easy. And I think that really helped. And I always knew, because of the motorsport side of things, how important media was going to be. So it was kind of one of those things that just sort of came, I wouldn't say it came naturally, but I just knew that it had to be done. So whatever I could do to enhance the way that I spoke to people, or the way I spoke on camera or in an interview, or even just on family, like filming, whatever it may be, then I was kind of onto it. So, and that's like something I was going to say just before about talking to people, is that I think you've got to hold yourself in a certain confidence to show people that you believe in yourself. Because when you're out there talking to and networking, talking to potential sponsors or people who can help you, you've got to give off a certain air of confidence that you do believe in yourself, and this is your kind of life calling, if you will. So yeah, I think just trying to build up your confidence and be comfortable with yourself is a big thing there.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think that while you can be confident, there's a difference between confidence, arrogance, and having an out of control ego at the same time.
Absolutely.
I think if you come across with that degree of confidence, but you don't come across as a smart ass or whatever, people will actually gravitate towards you, because I think some people tend to think that they're going to be the next Formula One driver, which is not necessarily how it's going to be. I mean, for sure, there's a very few number of people that it does happen, but it's about having that degree of humility, which I think that you've got in bucket loads.
Yeah, exactly. I think you just have to be true to yourself. I mean, there might be some kids out there that works for them if they are that confident that they're going to be the next Danny Rick, and they run into a certain sponsor that just vibes with that, then that's fine. But it took me a very long time, and even like into my 20s, where for me to be able to say in a setting where, say, Liz and I might have been out together, that if someone asks you what you do, you say, I'm a racing driver. For me, that didn't come too easily, because I just felt like it wasn't, I don't know. I just felt like I hadn't made it to that point yet where I could say that. But once I started to actually say it, I suppose you start to act more in that sort of light, as if you are that person that you're sort of not portraying, but you're wanting to be. So I think having the confidence to say what you really want to do and what you want to be is a pretty big thing.
Yeah, and I think, look, for a lot of people, it doesn't come naturally, and that's okay. But it's one of those things. I think that you've just got to practice it. That you've got to keep on going about it, and then take opportunities. Like as we've sort of hit on, you're a natural speaker. Yet other kids might not be natural speakers, but there's no point sort of hiding behind your helmet or hiding behind your go-kart, your race car, whatever. You've got to practice it and put yourself out there. Otherwise, you're not going to go forward, because
that's right.
If media knows that they can put a camera in front of you and you can actually speak with confidence, be entertaining, be interesting, the more entertaining and interesting you are, the more airtime that you're going to get.
Absolutely. And I'm still trying to find my feet with that a bit as well. Like on some of the TCR telecasts, I still feel like my personality hasn't quite got across fully through the camera yet. I'm still, just by nature of me always being on the sponsorship train, I'm kind of a little bit self-taught in the way of making sure that I always mention the sponsors, and it might come across a little bit too scripted. But I think as you sort of go on, you learn which parts of your personality you sort of want to let out, and we're still sort of getting there and building our brand at the moment.
Yeah, no, that's also good advice. And I think, when it does come to the sponsorship mentions, the craftier that you can be about how you do your sponsorship mentions. It's like I watch a lot of the American sport, and I'll sit there and I'll reel off 20 different sponsors. It all just kind of gets lost. There's no message in that makes me want to go and support that particular sponsor. But I think if you can be crafty in the way that you do it, and the way that it comes across, I think that's quite important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we do try and do that as much as we can. And sometimes, yeah, I suppose, like you say, it might even pay to have a bit of a brainstorming session with someone who's a mate that's funny and can
Yes.
can kind of think of funny angles to kind of pull. So because it doesn't always come as easy in the moment.
No, well, that's right. And I mean, again, it's just down to learning about your sponsor, learning about what their touch points are, like their key messages that they want to get across through the sponsorship and or through what they actually do for a business. It's like, in your case, you've got Moutai, which is a very unique brand. It's massive in China, as in that product. Like, tell us what Moutai is.
So Moutai is a traditional Chinese spirit. It's a white liquor. It's made from sorghum, and it can only be made in Moutai town in China. So it's very much like a champagne that can only be made in Champagne in France, in the way that it's traditionally made there in that village. And it's a very high-end product in China. So you'll see, well, you won't see, but you'll find if you ever go into business in China, you'll be drinking that over a business deal. And that is how they kind of bond. And it'll be like a dignitary type thing where, maybe if ScoMo's going over there to try and patch up Chinese relations, he might have to have a few shots of Moutai to try and sort that one out. But yeah, they're one of the top 3 liquor brands in the world. A lot of people here in Australia haven't heard of them, obviously, but having that base Chinese market of, close to or over 2 billion people, whatever China is now, it's, you don't have to capture much of that market to be one of the top 3.
No, I mean, it's the actual product. Is it Baiju? Is that the product is?
Yes, it's Baiju.
I mean, you see it at another brand at the Australian Open. They sponsor the Australian Open and so on. It's it is a massive product in China. What's it like?
Yeah. I've actually grown, and this is me being completely honest, I've grown a liking to it. The start of the flavour is quite, there's a reason they call it firewater. You definitely notice it, but the back end of it is a bit more like a whiskey, and it gives you that warm sort of aftertaste. That's quite a complex flavour. So, yeah, we've done a lot of tastings with people around tracks this year and with friends and family, and you get some people who would have the same reaction to vodka, a straight vodka shot.
Yeah, sure.
Like their face winces up. But a lot of people who like drinking their liquor neat enjoy it quite a lot. So yeah, I'm not promoting this to our underage. But anyone who's 18 and over and can afford a bottle of Moutai, go for it.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll get further into TCR and so on, but obviously Moutai is a Chinese brand. A couple of years ago, you had the opportunity. It was a very last-minute trip to go to China and race over there. How did that all come about? It was like literally last second, wasn't it?
Yeah, this was pretty cool. Something that I'd wanted to do for a long time. And I suppose this particular story, and I'll try and cut it short for you, is it pays tribute to the fact that you always need to stay in touch with people, and no matter how long it takes, eventually someone will listen to you and you'll get a result. So I started driver coaching back in maybe 2012, 2013 when I was racing Formula Ford, and I got a gig doing the Radical Drive Days out at Sydney Motorsport Park. So just corporate events. And the head coach there was James Winslow, who is a UK guy, raced F3 overseas. He's won the F3 Drivers' Championship here in Australia twice. Raced A1 GP. So he's been around and done a lot in the prototype series over the past decade, I suppose. Raced Le Mans. So I sent James my resume when I first got to Radical, and I just said, this is who I am and this is what I do. And we'd had a chat at the circuit, and I just said, if there's any opportunities that you know of, let me know. So 7 years later, James and I hadn't worked together for a while, and he just happened to be back here in Australia, and he was watching me overtake, I think it was Steve Owen up at Townsville, race 2, I'm pretty sure that was, or race 3. And there was an opening for a driver to come over to China to help promote the series over there. And he just rang me on the Monday, and I was on my way to a sponsors meeting from Gosford train station to Sydney. And he just called me and said, hey, mate, do you want to fly to Beijing this weekend and come and drive an LMP3? Huh. And I was like, yeah, 100%. Like, what's the catch? And all we had to do was pay for our travel to get there, and it was a tip in from him, basically. So he just sort of put the good word in for us to the category, and it obviously watched us develop over the years and knew we could do the job. And so I flew out with Dad and Liz. We all went on a little 4-day holiday to China, and I think we booked our tickets as the ticket confirmations came through as we arrived in the bus to the airport.
Yeah. So it's no easy feat to be able to get your visas and so on together to go to China, all in the space of about 2 days.
Yeah. That was the big worry for us, because we weren't sure exactly what we needed to do. And by the end of the 2 or 3 days, we had a saying, which was be more like James. And because he basically told me that on the phone, because I was stressing about how we're going to get there, because the Hong Kong riots and university student riots were happening at that time. So we couldn't fly through Hong Kong, which is the general route that you would go to Beijing to activate the 4-day travel visa. Oh. And James was just like, stress less, mate, be more like me, and just book the flights. So yeah.
And racing over there. I mean, I've been over to China to a GT race event a few years ago, and it is so different to what we're used to here, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Rocking up to this particular circuit, there was what you would probably just class as working type people in very small apartment blocks all around everywhere. And it was a bit of a culture shock to us, flying into China, being a communist country, and being able to, or just even getting a SIM card, you had to, show your passport and IDs and all that sort of thing. So, but yeah, when we rocked up to the circuit, you've got these people there that are, probably earning less than most of we do in a year, sorry. And there's just a multi-million-dollar racetrack that's been built right next to their apartments. So as we were walking through the residential area, all you can hear is LMP3 cars and GT cars practicing on the Friday morning. So it was pretty full on. And yeah, I mean, the series and especially the race director were really professional. We thought it was great. So yeah, even Australia could learn a little bit from the driver's briefing that I was at.
Yeah, I mean, you've really got to rethink everything over there. I remember in the middle of a GT3 practice session over there, a Pantech truck decided to drive down the pit lane, and you've got GT3 cars going everywhere. Let's not get into the corporate hospitality and that side of things either, trying to keep things under control. But it's very, very, very interesting and a terrific life experience. And now this year, you're on the big stage of TCR, a fantastic category. Tell us how that's come about and your impressions of TCR so far.
Yeah, so TCR for me was something that we looked at when it obviously had first come out, and we showed a lot of interest in it. We've been lucky enough to have a close relationship with Jason Bright, who obviously raced in the series and won the first inaugural race there. So we've been trying to get into the series from that point. David Wall gave me an opportunity to drive their Honda at the very first test day that the TCR had back in 2018. So we've been very interested from that point on, and being that it was always going to be its own show and its own main game with its own coverage, that sort of suited us, I think, because we've been, in all honesty, we've been ready as a driver, I think, to take this step for a number of years, but we've never had a category that we could sell to sponsors before in the way that TCR provides you. So the selling point of the TCR, like I said, being its own main game, sort of speaks for itself. And the alternatives that we could have gone down this year, one of them, which has had their race cancelled last weekend, we would have had not much media coverage. We wouldn't have got the chance to run against Mostert, Holdsworth, all those guys in the feeder categories to supercars. So, for me, it's been a big driver development thing as much as it has been a brand building exercise for us to sort of say, here we are, we can race against Chaz, and we're ready to do anything else that people want to throw at us as well.
Yeah, I think the beauty of it is that, you've got that ability to have a share of voice, which a lot of other categories you kind of get lost in the milieu of it. But you've got that share of voice, and you've got such a brilliant mix of not only manufacturers but drivers as well. So you've got people like Jason Bargwanna, a Bathurst winner, Garth Tander. Then there's guys like yourself that are on their way up that can actually put themselves out there in front of people, and you're effectively on a level playing field. I know that's a roundabout way of putting it, but you are on a level playing field from a driver's perspective.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what we not to badmouth supercars or anything like that. Like it's hard to go into supercars when you don't have the right equipment. It's hard to go into any race series when you don't have the right equipment. And I think we sort of knew that looking at our options when we were talking supercars, and I think that was one of the big things that played into it for us was TCR. Although it's managed by a BOP, which is completely different, it brings a lot of variety, and every car is going to have its weekend. And I suppose when you've got, like my situation specifically, when you've got Chaz and Garth running in the same car set up by the same team, there's nowhere to hide in terms of excuses as a driver. So if they're fast, you should be fast. Otherwise, you've got work to do. So it's a proving ground for us.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And the other side of it is that the cars that we race here in Australia are exactly the same as the cars that they race all over the world in other TCRs and the World TCR Championships. So it then presents international opportunities if you know what you're doing behind the wheel of one of these things.
Yeah, exactly. And for us, that's where we really would like to go. We've obviously, Moutai being on board there, an international brand. We were, I think, probably one of the only Toyota 86 drivers as well to bring in an international brand, being Pertamina Lubricants as well. So we've got international partners who could well benefit from us being overseas. So I think the good thing about these partnerships that we've managed to create is that we're not going to be tied to Australia if there's an opportunity that comes up elsewhere. So, I'd certainly, if we do well in the championship this year and we can bring home some more good results, it'd be great to try and get over to Audi, to their factory, and try and build a relationship over there because, World TCR I think is on this weekend or next weekend, and they're at Nürburgring or the Nordschleife for their first round. So
no pressure.
Imagine going.
Yeah, no pressure at all. Mate, that's awesome. And obviously the road through, it's not just about the driver, there's more to it. Who have been some of the people that have been an inspiration to you and assisted along the way?
The first one that comes to mind, it's kind of gone in a few stages for me, like growing up. When we used to go to the circuit as a kid, I think Dad did a little bit of work for Mark Larkin when he was still based in Sydney. So I loved the Mitre 10 Falcon as a kid. So I used to always go up to Larko's pit, go and see him, and he's given me solid advice over the years, and even as recently as last year through COVID. So he was probably the first one that I started listening to about sponsorship. Peter Dolman, who I know you know fairly well.
Yeah, for better or worse.
Another really good sponsorship man.
Yeah, no, he's great. Yeah.
So Pete, John Goss as well, another guy who's great in front of the camera. The Goss family are really good family friends with us. So, and John's kind of like a grandfather in a way, really, and a father to Dad as well. So, we've had a lot of good people in our corner, and probably the most recent has been Jason Bright. Not only is Brighty obviously talented, and that's why he got to Indy, but he's also very technical in the car, which is a great help. But his commercial nous and being able to do deals outside the car are second to none as well. So, through a lot of the COVID stuff, I was bouncing ideas off him and sort of checking what he thought was acceptable and where we should go. So, you need good people around you to be able to talk to and bounce things off.
Yeah, without doubt. And what's some of the best advice that you've had throughout your career?
Probably not on a sponsorship side of things, but I'll give Pete a shout out here. And he always used to tell me every corner, every lap.
Yeah.
So I only just started to realise what he actually means by that. So
we actually had that chat the last time I spoke to him. I think it was just after Phillip Island, it might have been, and he brought that up and said that you referenced that very closely.
Yep. Yeah, that's been a good one over the years, and like you can kind of apply it everywhere, I suppose. Really, like
just explain that a little bit to us. Every corner, every lap. So
every corner you need to get right, basically, and you need to do that every lap. So that's the simple version of it, because by the end of the race, you want to have the quickest time overall, right? So, and to do that, you need to have every corner, every lap sorted. So, you can apply that to your racing, but I also reckon you could probably apply that to your life as well. So, make every minute count and make every day count as well.
100%, and I think that's actually a perfect way to round it off. That's tremendous advice there for anyone who is listening that might be involved in motorsport or getting involved in motorsport. And there's been some tremendous insights into the way that you go about your business to get onto the racetrack every other weekend. And we wish you and the Moutai team all the best for the remainder of the TCR Australia Championship this year.
Thanks very much, mate. Appreciate it. It's been great to be on. I think the only other thing that I would leave people with is the the angle we were talking about before about sort of, staying true to yourself, but also just paying it forward and being a good person gets you a long way, because that's actually how we met Moutai. So, for all the cold calling I've done, I've never come across a sponsor as big as Moutai. And when we got Moutai, it was just through being myself and being a good person. So,
yeah, well, that's tremendous advice, not just in racing, in life in general. If you're a good person, generally good things will happen. Luke, thanks very much, mate. Great to have you on the Motorsport Coaching podcast, and we look forward to keeping an eye on your development on the channels of 7 throughout the year.
Awesome. Thank you, mate. Good luck, everyone.
I trust you enjoyed our chat with Luke King as much as I did. I'd recommend almost any young driver to listen to this and start implementing some of Luke's methods around your own racing career, or make sure you recommend it to someone that might benefit. Of course, feel free to give the Motorsport Coaching podcast a review on your favourite podcast platform. Thanks once again to Motivate Training for powering the Motorsport Coaching podcast. All the information you need about Motivate Training's programs across media, mindfulness, nutrition, sponsorship and fitness can be found at motivatetraining.com.au. Oh, it's important to point out too that we spoke a lot about Moutai and Moutai Baiju in the course of this podcast. Please drink responsibly, and as you know, you do not drink and drive. We've got some links in the show notes and the places you can keep track of Luke's adventures. We love having you tune in, and until next time, keep it fast on the track and safe on the road. You've been listening to the Motorsport Coaching podcast, powered by Motivate Training. I'm Matt Payne, and we'll see you then.
Well, thanks everyone for listening to this week's show. I really hope you enjoyed that one as much as I did. Now, remember, all the show notes with the links and the specials mentioned in today's show are available over at motivatetraining.com.au. If you haven't already, I'd really appreciate it if you could head to iTunes or Stitcher, type in Motorsport Coaching, subscribe, and leave us a review. Each week, I'll read them out, and you'll go into a monthly draw to win a fantastic prize. If you have any questions or comments, please email us at motivatetraining.com.au or head over to our Facebook page at Motivate T. Until next time, take care.